Hello, my name is Bill Haley, and this is for Haley 2024 The Movements Government Reform Ideas. Now, this video is going to be my general thoughts about the entire amendment. Now, if this is the first video you're seeing, I am proposing a full change of the U.S. Constitution, changing the foundations of government in a very significant way. I want to lead more towards competitive governing agencies, more liberty, more freedom, smaller government. But for people who want bigger government, they can have it within their group that they select. So this one's not going to be talking about the full amendment. This video is going to be on my general thoughts about the amendment. So let's go through it. These discussions I'm having here in these videos, I'm going to do a couple dozen videos here in February and March of 2021. About a year ago, I did several dozen videos. I enhanced on the reforms of I have within Haley 2024, and I really increased and updated those reforms and created an amendment, a U.S. Constitution, to create those reforms in a significant way. So, these discussions are attempting to explain why. This amendment is meant to be consistent with and the best structure for the reforms within Haley 2024. So the reforms, a couple of the big reforms within Haley 2024 is free enterprise education, a change from government welfare to a charity system, free enterprise roads, going to a free enterprise social security, major free enterprise within healthcare for Medicaid, Medicare, getting rid of a lot of government reforms, free enterprise military. We have a lot of controls on it. So everything I talk about, free enterprise is just not a free-for-all. It has societal oversight, and you're governed by competitive governing agencies, competitive regulatory agencies, competitive representative agencies. These discussions are pulling clauses from many sections and sectors together to see the big picture. So I have 15 sections and 30 sectors. There's a lot within my amendment. Many clauses rely heavily on CRA's basic structure. So you have to understand the basic structure of what I'm trying to do, the CRA structure. And so when I talk about a clause, you have to really look at it within the full structure. Look at the bylaws, the taxation, the supermajority requirements. So there's a lot to the amendment. And any one amendment or any one clause can be taken out of context and not make much sense or look like you would oppose it. But within the full context of the full amendment, it is a good, solid system. And any negative externality or any negatives you want to say this won't work, look at the full structure. Look at the rating system. Look at the competitive nature of it. Look at a lot of things I have within the system. And I think I've thought through the system significantly. Most issues outside of the 6 sectors that I have significant sector board control will need to be figured out by each of the CRAs. If you don't know the system, you don't understand that saying right there. You have to understand my structure. So there's 6 sectors out of the 30, because I separate all government power into 30 sectors. 6 sectors will be more of a societal oversight role, giving authority to police officers and judges and prosecutors so they don't get out of control. Giving authority to anybody in the military so they don't get out of control. Being our commanders in chief and the commanders of our military and the foreign diplomats. Those have to be at the sector board level. Sector board level is monopolized control over everybody within the jurisdiction, not within the competitive nature of it. Only 6 of the 30, and those are more oversight roles. So the other sectors cannot take free enterprise and just do whatever. They put limits, but they only have controls over negative externalities. As long as you're doing something peaceful and you're not harming people outside of the transaction, outside of what you're doing, then those sectors are not really going to control you. It's to stop people from creating negative externalities, harming people outside of the transaction and outside of what they're doing. The competitive nature of CRAs is the base of these reforms. Right now, when you go to the DMV to get your ID and the driver's license and all that stuff, you have one place to go. They don't make it competitive where you're allowed to go to different companies that might be able to give you better service. So that's why it's always the joke of inefficient governance. And we see we see medical offices with some of those same features now because government's getting so involved in it. This amendment is over 12,800 words. No doubt about it, it's long. But there's reasons why it's long. The current Constitution, I believe, is 4,487. At least that's what it came up with on my word count. So I read through every single word of it many, many, many times. Many reviews of every clause I've read. I understand the U.S. Constitution frontwards and backwards. And I understand why it's not being followed right now. I understand why it's not being, why the Supreme Court is not abiding by it. I understand why things are the way it is. I understand why the U.S. Constitution made the United States so much more prosperous than other countries. So much more liberty and so many more human rights and civil liberties than other countries. But we can do so much better. It is longer because I split up all government authority into 30 sectors. So it just takes many more clauses. Because the police, people who are in charge of police are not the same people who are in charge of education. And different people are in charge of environmental protection. Top elected leaders over each of the 30 sectors. No one leader is in charge of a whole bunch of secretaries of commerce and energy and military, the Pentagon and whatever, health and human resources. Everyone has its own elected executive. Their own Congress. Each sector has its own Congress, and own state legislature, and own city council. We'll get into all that on the other videos. It is longer because I try to close many loopholes. So there are so many loopholes. It shouldn't be the loopholes, but the Supreme Court created those loopholes or allowed the state legislatures or the Congress to create loopholes. And they're doing so much that they're not allowed to do. They're infringing on so many liberties that they're not allowed to infringe on. But they're getting away with it. So I have a lot of clauses trying to close a lot of those loopholes. Just trying to make sure I state in enough words and enough clauses, no, you really are not allowed to do that. Sometimes the Constitution is silent or just mildly goes into something. And the Supreme Court just allows them to run with it. I really try to close off many different avenues of having to monopolize government control. I have many clauses describing the proper principles of the transition. So this is just a transition. Government has gotten into so much. Government's gotten into education and social security. So social security needs to be transitioned over to free enterprise. It takes a lot of clauses. I'm sorry, it does. So that's why the Constitution is so long. Because I really go into every avenue. I go into currency. We have a much better currency than the current Constitution. And the current Constitution is a totally different system than what we currently have. We're not allowed to do what we're doing with the Federal Reserve, but they're doing it. And I have a much better system for currency. Many taxes are described. And the transition, again, so many clauses about the transition to pay off the current government debt. We can do it. We sell all government assets to the private sector. There's a lot of money in that. And that's going to pay down a lot of debt. Many clauses speak to civil liberty and civil rights. I have a full system on civil rights. And I don't just let judges control that. I have representative bodies control that. Where even as low as 30% of the representatives of 30% of the people can uphold a good civil liberty and stop government overreach. Every clause is limited by other clauses. So I have a lot of clauses in there that seems to say one thing, but then in another clause I limit it even more, or I break out and allow government to do something because it needs to be able to do something, but you want to have a principle of stopping one thing, but then allowing government to do another thing within that. So we limit clauses. That's why it's so long. There are many clauses just trying to fine-tune where authority must yield to liberties, or liberty must yield to authority to stop negative externalities. But the monopoly control can only be done in my amendment, in the U.S. in the proposed amendment that I'm proposing here. Can only be done if there's a significant negative externalities. And the whole rating system I have set up is going to solve 90% of that to begin with. It's going to solve that negative externality problem. But there's going to be a small percentage that are still going to come through that we're going to have to throw up to the next level and have monopoly control saying, no, you cannot injure somebody. But those take a lot of clauses, is what I'm trying to say. And I'm not saying I can't limit the Constitution and take out some clauses or combine some stuff or make an overarching point. But when you try to make an overarching point, as a current Constitution does, let's say the Ninth Amendment. The Ninth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution tries to make an overarching point, and now it's ignored by all the U.S. Supreme Court justices. No federal judge listens to the Ninth or even the 10th Amendment. It's just like it's not even there. And so that's what I'm trying to talk about. The 9th and 10th Amendment, man, we should pass that again and say, no, you really are not allowed to do what you're doing. But but if we do not use enough words, enough clauses, we really need to stop every avenue of people trying to have monopolized control over other people. So, almost done with this one system. Here are the 30 sectors I break it down to. Now, this video is not about going into each one. I'll just briefly go over 5 in the charity system because we get rid of all government welfare. 5 in the foreign protection system because we go private military, but with a lot of controls. And the controls doesn't stop the free enterprise benefits, but it does stop the negative externalities of bad people getting big weapons and doing bad things and trying to take over. We have many systems to stop that. And 5 in the violent crime system, we go free enterprise law enforcement, free enterprise prisons, free enterprise court systems, but with a healthy, very healthy respect for civil liberties within that system, within those systems. They have to. You cannot be a government official with governmental power, a prison guard, a court, people in the courts, judges, the prosecutors. You cannot be all those things without having the authorization of representatives of 70% of the people. Then you see the other 15 clauses if you want to really read them. This video is not about that. Right now, you can look at my website and look at the other videos for that. Here's the structure of the government. Again, I can't go through all of this right now, but you see 12 distinct competitive regulatory agencies per sector. The 30 sectors we just talked about. Here are those 30 sectors. Within each sector, you select your competitive regulatory agencies. Who's going to regulate you and who's going to govern you. And if you have too lax of standards, Nobody wants to go do business with you. If you're a restaurant and you have low food safety standards, nobody wants to go to your restaurant. They're going to go to the ones with the better restaurant, and low ratings, which corresponds with low food safety standards, are going to result in low business, and you're going to pay a price for that. So here's the breakdown a little bit better, and here's other 15. Whether it's human resources or identity or environmental, transportation. Again, transportation, free enterprise roads everywhere. All land and water, all government land and water is sold to the free enterprise system. Free enterprise healthcare and free enterprise banking. We're going to have a lot better banking. We're going to have a lot better currency. We're going to have well over 600 currencies within the United States with one standard. It's a much better system. All money has to be 100% backed up with something of real value. Free enterprise education. And again, there's controls everywhere, but free enterprise at the same time. And the controls are only against negative externalities. Every child has to be educated, but their parents are in charge of how they're going to be educated. Unless they really neglect so much that the child just is falling way too far behind. I mean, and you have to have 70% of the population or representative 70% of the population to say, no, you've gone too far. You need to educate your children. So there's a lot of standards around it, but you have to educate your children. Anyway, a lot more to it. Anyway, everything's on Haley2024.org. There's so many pages out there with each of the reforms that you can find the full Constitution. This video is just a 18 minute video talking about why we're changing it. Why are we changing the U.S. Constitution and some of the factors? I have like a 30-minute video out there about my proper respect for the U.S. Constitution and how we're just not abiding by it. Anyway, please consider a donation to the Haley 2024, the movement. There's a donation page on the website. And until the next video.